Hello, everybody. I'm back and I'm super excited this week because I get to read to you some of my favorite stories. I get to read to you St. Patrick's Day stories because in exactly a week from the day I'm recording this on March 17th is my favorite holiday, St. Patrick's Day. I thought we could start out with a Irish folk tale, a retelling of The Prince of Ireland and the Three Magic Stallions by Bryce Milligan. I think it should be really fun, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. So, there once was a king in Ireland who had a young queen. They had one son, and all was well and naught was ill. But one day, the queen fell sick and God called her away, leaving the King of Ireland with only one son and a great sorrow. 3 years and a day passed, and finally the king took a second wife. Then all was well and naught was ill, and after a year and a day, she bore him two sons, as like as lambs. Now, it's many adventures the king's eldest son had. Every day the prince went out hunting and harrying the counties of Ireland. And there wasn't a deer in the land so swift that the prince couldn't catch it. And there wasn't a fox so clever that he couldn't track it down. The king took great delight in the doings of his eldest son, for the prince would hold the throne after him. Thus it went, year upon year, well and not ill, until the boys came of an age to hunt with their elder brother. Then what was well seemed even better, for the three princes became fast friends. But the young queen watched her husband closely, and at last an evil thought came to her. The king doesn't love my sons as much as his eldest. They will never amount to more than the uncles of princelings. I must clear the way to the throne for my own son. So one day, the queen called for the king's eldest son. The prince put aside his hounds and horses and sat with the queen, chatting and playing at cards. The queen won the first hand, and the prince won the second. There's a fine thing, he laughed. We're both satisfied, having won a hand each. I will be satisfied, she said, suddenly letting her anger show. For I lay upon you a gesh, to perform or die, that you are not to sleep 2 nights under the same roof, nor eat 2 meals from the same fire, until you have brought me the 3 magic stallions that the young giant Sean O'Donnell keeps at the edge of the western worlds. Shocked though he was, the prince knew the rules of the deadly game. Then I lay a gesh upon you, to perform or die, that you must stand before the high cross at the hermit's chapel, with a sheaf of oats in one hand and a needle in the other, and eat nothing but what comes from the sheaf of oats and passes through the eye of the needle until I return. Lord have mercy, she cried. It's starved I'll be, or frozen, or both. Release me from your gesh, and I will release you from mine. I cannot, he said. No gesh was ever laid upon a prince of Ireland that he did not perform or die in the trying. Thus I am bound, and thus are you. So the queen went out to the high cross. There she stood with a sheaf of oats in the one hand and a needle in the other. And it's a miserable creature she was. But that's the way of the world. Some things go well and others ill. The 2 half-brothers of the eldest prince of Ireland came to him sick with sorrow, saying, We will go where you go and do what you do, for it's a wicked trick our mother has played upon you for our sakes. So the 3 of them mounted their horses and rode into the west, passing like wind over the plains until they came to a black oak wood. Beyond the wood, they could hear the crashing of the seas upon the shore of the edge of the western world itself. Then the Prince of Ireland said to his brothers, I've come upon this place before in my ramblings. Hide yourselves away, and you'll see a sight worth a song in our great father's high hall. Across the meadow came four great gangly girls, each carrying upon her back a bound brick of hay. Giants they were, and none too comely, with their wild hair like dry winter branches, and their fingernails like rusty, twisted daggers. We're well beyond the hearing of our brother Sean O'Donnell, said one, and I'm in the mind for a bit of Cayley. The others agreed, and one pulled out a tin whistle and began to blow. Now she played right badly, and with the wheezing of the whistle and the great pounding of their feet and the timeless flailing of their arms, it was all the young men could do to keep from hooting with laughter. But the eldest Prince of Ireland said, "Shh! Did you not hear that these are the sisters of the giant Sean O'Donnell? Let us hide inside these ricks of hay and see where it is this stroke of luck will take us." At last, the giant sisters stopped their dancing to pick up their bundles. "Oh, this is heavy," complained one after another. But the last sister picked up the rick of hay that had no man inside. "You're just tuckered from the dancing," she laughed, and off they walked. Now all was well and naught was ill, for soon they came to the great horse barn of Sean O'Donnell, and there they pitched the hay upon the floor and locked the door behind them. So it was that the princes found themselves right in front of the three magic stallions. They waited for night until they could hear the snoring of the giant. Then the Prince of Ireland said to his brothers, "Get up and take hold of the white stallion yonder." Carefully the boys crept up to the stall, but the stallion let out such a neigh that Sean O'Donnell jumped out of his sleep and cried to his old washerwoman, "Washerwoman, go and see who it is that would try to steal my horses." Well, the washerwoman went to the barn and rattled the lock and peered between the slats. But she returned, saying, "Master, the barn door is well locked and your stallions are all there." When the snoring rose again, the eldest Prince of Ireland said, "Great Stallion, you are the finest horse in all the world. Your coat is like snow upon the high hills, and your eyes are clear gems. I am the eldest son of the King of Ireland, and I am under a gesh of strong magic to take you and these other noble beasts before our queen." Much to their surprise, the great white stallion spoke. "I am honored that such as you would attempt this deed, but I too am under a powerful spell, that no living man may leave me from this place unless Sean O'Donnell himself gives me to that man as a free gift." "If that's the way of it, then I must do what I must do," said the prince, sighing. He reached up and patted the stallion's neck, then stood back and put his fingers in his ears. The stallion let out such a neigh that it shook the hills themselves. At that, Sean O'Donnell jumped out of his sleep and cracked his stony skull upon the roof beam. As mad as only a young giant can be, he rushed out to the barn. With 6 fingers on each hand, and 5 toes on the one foot and 4 on the other, and with blood running down from his head, and with fire in his eyes, he was a fearsome sight to see. Now it wasn't well at all. In fact, it was very ill indeed. For Sean O'Donnell thrust open the doors only to find 3 defiant princes, swords in hand. "It's well caught you are," said Sean O'Donnell. "What can you say for yourselves?" Then the eldest son of the King of Ireland spoke up, saying, "Sean O'Donnell, I'm the Prince of Ireland, and these be my brothers. I'm under a gesh to bring these 3 fine horses before the Queen of Ireland herself, and neither you nor wind nor water will keep me from that task." "Ha ha!" bellowed the giant. You're a bold little coney, my prince. Then laughing as the swords broke upon his stony hide, he tied each brother up to the roof beam, for though he was but a dozen years old, he was full twice as tall as a grown man, with all the deviltry of youth under the dangling toes of the three. Sean O'Donnell built a fire. Prince of Ireland, he asked, was it ever in a worse fix than you find yourself now? Aye, indeed I was, he answered, and 100 times worse at that. Would you be for telling me the story of such a bad fix? Asked Sean O'Donnell, for there was nothing he liked better than a good story. That I will, if you'll be after letting me and my brothers sit beside that fire rather than roast over it, said he. So that was done, and the giant growled, let's have the telling of your tale, and know that your lives depend upon your telling. Sean O'Donnell and his 4 gangly sisters sat to listen. Outside the door, the old washerwoman peered in. All was well as it could be. So the eldest son of the King of Ireland took courage, and this is the story he told. Once upon a day, when I first began my ramblings, not far at all from this very place, I came upon a great stone hall, and in this hall I found a woman kneeling as if her heart would break. Whatever is it that causes you such sorrow? I asked. Said she, oh, I'm a prisoner to a giant, and last night he brought me this babe asleep in the wheelbarrow there. And he has given me orders that I am to cook him a stew using the child's heart and its big right toe. And if I fail to do it, he will kill me as well. As to that, said I, we shall see. 'Twould be a pity to kill a babe for a giant's hunger. A pity indeed, she said, and a crime against nature itself, for the babe is of giant's blood as well. I looked in the barrow, and indeed, there was a babe the size of a yearling colt. So I said, cut off the child's toe if you must, but I will cut the heart from a ram I saw outside, and you shall make the stew with that. So she made a potion to make the child sleep, and she returned to cook the gruesome stew. Then we heard the giant coming. He was old and he was mean, and his tread was like thunder. And the old woman greeted him and served up the stew. Well, no sooner had he eaten than he laid himself down to sleep. I took hold of a pitchfork and heated it red hot in the fire. Then I thrust it into his eyes, blinding him. In an instant he was up and cursing. I had just slipped out the door when he called to me. Wait! I must reward with a golden ring any mortal who escapes me. And he threw out a ring the size of a bracelet. I picked it up and slipped it onto my arm. It'll bring the wearer luck, he said. Put it on. It's on my arm, it is, I bragged. Then he bellowed out, squeeze, ring, squeeze! And the ring squeezed tight upon my arm so that I could not get it off. Then he yelled, ring, ring, where are you? And the ring answered in a high, clear voice, here I am. And with that, the giant leaped upon the spot where I had been standing. Well, there we went, he hollering and jumping, I jumping and running, until we came to the edge of Loch Con. I grabbed up a stone and I smashed away at that ring until it broke in half. Then I flung the pieces far out over the waters. Well, at that moment, the giant called out, ring, ring, where are you? And the ring answered just before it hit the water, here I am. I suppose that old giant could not swim, for he made a great leap of it and came down in a deep part of the lake. He sank into the water screaming, and that was the last time I ever saw him. Now is that not as bad a plight, said the Prince of Ireland to Sean O'Donnell, as for you to put a fire beneath my toes and hang me from a roof beam? That was a grand story indeed, said Sean. Now the giant's old washerwoman spoke up. Sean O'Donnell, she said, you must be letting these princes go free, for this story is very truth itself. And if you doubt it, look at your own right foot where your big toe should be. It was that very toe that the old giant ate. And I am the very woman, and this is the very man who saved your life that day. Well, after that, the giant couldn't give enough honor to the eldest prince of Ireland. Anything that is mine you may have, said Sean O'Donnell. Take my sisters, my horses, my gold. And the eldest son of the King of Ireland said, May I have the horses? Indeed you may, said Sean. So all was well and naught was ill. As soon as the princes were mounted, Sean O'Donnell shouted, Away like wind upon the sea, take these three where they would be. And before you could snap your fingers 3 times, they were riding up before the gates of their father, the king, for that was the magic that was in those stallions. Besides, that is, the ability of the great white stallion to carry on polite conversation with an Irish prince. At once they rode into the yard of the hermit's chapel, and there, standing before the high cross, the queen stood shivering with cold and hunger and all. Then the eldest son of the King of Ireland called out to her, I bring to you the 3 magic stallions of Sean O'Donnell and your 2 sons as well. I release you from the gesh. Then all was well and naught was ill. The queen's fear of the king's love for his eldest son had melted away. For standing before the high cross in the wild wind with her people gazing on, had taught the queen humility. Her sons were given large estates side by side, and everyone was pleased. As for the eldest prince of Ireland, well, his adventures were hardly at an end. But those are tales for other telling, each one well worth waiting for. Well, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all in my next video. I think I'm going to do one about the history of St. Patrick's Day, and I hope you all check it out. Bye.